Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Read the Spoils. I'm Mark Sullivan.
I'm Delaila Lugo.
Jason Kwasnicki here.
Today, we're all recording from our own individual cabins at Whispering Rocks Summer Camp. And we're here to talk about a video game. What video game is that?
Psychonauts.
Yeah, cool. I realized I didn't actually say, like, who's gonna say the name of the game?
You didn't choose, so I went with it.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, we're talking about Psychonauts. Huh?
I also get bottom bunk. I don't want top bunk.
Yeah, so last episode, if you listen to last episode, we promised the Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword, and that's still coming. It unfortunately didn't. It took a little too long to come from the UK for Delaila. That's all right.
Technical errors, yes.
Technical, yeah. Leave it up to the mail service, the royal mail service, as it were. So yeah, Skyward Sword is still coming. It's just coming a little later, and we decided, well, we were gonna do Psychonauts next anyway. So we just kind of shifted it forward. So we're doing an episode on Psychonauts. Because Psychonauts 2, right around the corner, probably my most anticipated game of the rest of the year. Yeah, I'll get into that a little more as we talk. I have to move this up. I can't do it anymore. Yeah, so Psychonauts. So before we move on, reap the spoils. Monthly spoiler cast. We spoil the game. We're talking about Psychonauts. We're gonna spoil Psychonauts. So if you've not played Psychonauts, go play Psychonauts and then come back and listen to this episode. It's not a long game. I even dare say the story's like not too crazy. But it's still always worth playing the game first and then hearing what we think about the game.
Yeah. Also, if you're an audio listener, Mark is wearing the Rasputin goggles.
Yeah, that's when I mentioned I had to take them off. I was talking about the goggles. If you want to see me wearing Razz's goggles, go check out the episode on YouTube. Yeah, that's all for there. So yeah, I guess are we ready to get into a history lesson for Psychonauts?
Yes.
I'm ready.
Jason, you've been really quiet so far.
Yeah,
I feel like you're always actually really quiet during the intros. That's fine though.
I like to let you roll, man. You do your thing. You do so much prep work for this stuff. You gotta bask in the glory of it.
Thanks, pal. Okay, so Psychonauts, made by a little team called Double Fine Productions, formed in the year 2000. They were formed by a man named Tim Schafer, who worked at LucasArts for either the better part of a decade or just over a decade. He was at LucasArts for a long time. Apparently, Jason did not know that.
Nope.
Yeah, Tim Schafer was a pivotal person for LucasArts, making lots of seminal point and click adventure games, including but not limited to Day of the Tentacle and Full Throttle, Grim Fandango. He was instrumental in making LucasArts a lot of treasured LucasArts point and click adventure games. He left in 2000, formed Double Fine. And the idea for Psychonauts actually was conceived during Full Throttle's development. There was a cut segment where the main character was going to have hallucinogenic or like a psychedelic experience or whatever on peyote, and they wound up cutting that because it was a little too mature for this family-friendly game. So that idea kind of that was cut, but he kept it in the back of his head, and it became Psychonauts. I thought that was interesting.
I would say it's still pretty mature without the psychedelics.
So it's weird.
You talking about Full Throttle or?
No, just the game itself. Like, if they had gone with the peyote lead,
without the
mature explicitly, but this game is also mature.
Definitely without the psychedelic like drug use and whatnot, it's still like the game is rated T for teen, right? It's not rated E10 or E. What's up, Jason?
I would say, I don't know if I would say mature so much as in many ways, maybe a slightly more mature. It's sort of like Shrek, right? Where it can be enjoyed by all ages, but
That's true.
you have to be
Sure.
older to get a lot of the shit that's going on in there.
So Psychonauts, it had like a long dev cycle. It was in development. Well, it was in active development for about 2 years, but it was kind of in the works for about 4.5 years. A lot of that had to do with some of that had to do with the publishing difficulties. So Microsoft was originally publishing this game. It was originally going to be an Xbox exclusive.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah, and the person that was kind of pushing for this game left Microsoft. So new management came in and was cutting all outside Microsoft Studio games that they were publishing. They cut them all, and Tim Schafer, despite his best efforts to try and make sure they kept funding it, I think there was like a cutoff. Like if your game was supposed to be coming out later than 2004, they didn't want to continue bankrolling it, and Tim Schafer was like, "Oh, but it's coming out early 2005." They still cut it. So I also read that I believe Will Wright. I'm fact checking that as I go. It was one of the Will Wright, one of the founders of Maxis, was helping to keep the company afloat for a long time, just giving Tim Schafer money to keep the studio lights on, which I thought was interesting. But yeah, Microsoft dropped the game. Eventually, Majesco picked up the publishing rights to publish the game for Xbox and PC, and it came out on April 19th, 2005, later getting ported from a different port studio. I believe the name was Budcat something, for PS2 on June 21st the same year, 2005. And then it's been ported and released.
Did you just say Budcat or Buttcat?
Budcat. Bud as in Budweiser.
Okay. Yes,
Yeah,
okay.
not Buttcat.
Yeah,
But
I was hoping that would be an unfortunate name for a public company.
Yeah, the game's been ported like several times. It later came to still on PC, but came to Steam, got ported to Mac OS, OS X, Linux, got Xbox backwards compatibility. It got a PS2 release on PS3. It got the PS2 release on PS4. It's been ported a lot. Because it's kind of one of those cult classics, dare I say indie darlings, indie for its time, I guess. But yeah, Psychonauts was the first game of the now prolific Double Fine Productions. So that goes the history lesson, the brief history lesson I want to give for Psychonauts.
Nice.
Yeah, quick anecdote. It was on the topic of Tim Schafer leaving LucasArts and forming Double Fine. I went to an exhibit for video games at the Franklin Institute in Philadelphia a couple years ago, and they had a small section dedicated to Tim Schafer, including a copy of his job application for LucasArts, and he basically drew a comic of him working there. And it was just really, really charming, really, really creative. Like, that's the kind of shit that people might do now and it's kind of common, but like at the time, like that was super unique. And it was his application to apply to LucasArts. I thought it was super cool. And besides that, it had lots of concept art of his time at LucasArts, concept art of Psychonauts, which I was geeking out about. So yeah, just thought that was cool to bring up.
What a guy.
Yeah, what a guy.
Yeah, that personality really does come out, not just in this game, but most of the stuff he works on.
Yeah. So speaking of this game, we ready to jump right in? All right.
Let's do
I'm
it.
gonna preface this, and I really hope you guys liked this game. By the way, if you haven't played, again, final warning: if you haven't played the game, spoilers ahead. Pause the game, go play the game, then come back and listen. Um, yeah, I really hope you guys liked this game. This is one of I apparently you guys didn't know this prior to us like starting to play it. This is in my top 10 games of all time.
Yeah,
I know.
I didn't know that for
Yeah.
some reason.
Yeah, I love this game. It is one of my favorite games of all time. We're gonna talk about a lot of its shortcomings.
I knew that's why I knew going into this, no matter how I felt about the game, I had to be gentle with this one. I couldn't be too hard.
No, I mean you can, right? Like because I saw this
Oh
one.
no. I will not hold back criticizing. I just got to be gentle.
You gotta
The
soften
delivery.
I got to caress. Yes.
This one critic reviewer reviewed the game. I'm not actually sure how long ago this review was written, but I saw that he stated that Psychonauts like has to be viewed as a flawed masterpiece, and I think that's like the perfect way to describe this game.
So a lot of people describe, and I'm kind of loath to make this comparison because I think that Death Stranding is objectively a bad game, and this is a bad game. But I feel very similar coming out of this game, in the same way I did after we played Death Stranding, where I'm torn between things I loved about it, things that last night I had to stop playing at one point because I was about to smash my controller on the ground.
Yeah.
And as we have talked about prior to recording this, and we'll get into further, letting the hours go by and thinking about it more, I think there is definitely parts of it that are on the fault of the design of the game, and it can't be excused by external factors. But there are, to be fair, some things that it's just, the game aged as well, and many 3D platformers of this haven't, of that generation, to be fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that there's more about this game that I like than I dislike. And I think the parts about it that I like, I really, really like. Then the parts about it that I dislike, I really, really dislike. So yeah, I agree with you 100%, Jason. And yeah, I think it's a product of his time, but I think overall, and we'll get into gameplay, if there's a game like Mario, obviously it's Mario, but like I think of Mario 64 and how that's a really old game and the 3D platforming still holds up till this day. So like you can definitely tell that there was a smaller team on this and there wasn't as much like money going into it so that they could like clean that up. But I really am honestly looking forward to Psychonauts 2 to see how they learned and how they like adapt more modern 3D platforming to this game because it has a lot of charm to it.
Yeah.
Jason looks like he's ready to talk shit on Mario.
No,
64.
it's funny. It's funny she brought up Mario 64 because I was actually thinking about Mario 64 a lot when I was thinking about things that age versus things that are just bad in and of their time. And I think some aspects of Mario 64 hold up, but we'll get into it later on.
It's funny. It's funny that game is brought up. Like Katie, my significant other, tried playing that game when we picked up 3D All Stars, and she didn't play for more than 10 minutes because she couldn't stand it. She couldn't stand how it played, and like I'm finding that there is more of a divide between people that think that game is aged perfectly and people that think that game is unplayable. That's like becoming more and more prevalent, and I wasn't aware until 3D All Stars came out, and I guess it got back into more people's hands that people are like, wow, I don't want to play this game. Want to play Sunshine, want to play Galaxy, don't want to play 64, which is
there's a very specific reason. And again, we'll get into it further. There's a very specific reason that is just a product of its time. Actually, Delilah's probably very aware of this because she's into the Soulsborne games, and this was a prominent issue that came up with Dark Souls 2 and why it's a black sheep and why so many people hate it. That has to do with octadirectional controls, lack of 360 movement, but we'll get into that later. Yeah.
But let's open up with the thing that everyone's here to listen to, the spoilers. Let's talk about the ending. So or I guess the ending sequence. So we find out like pretty much halfway through the game, that Oleander is the one that's like behind the kidnapping of children, of the kids at the camp, and taking out their brains. And at the end of the game, we kind of find out why. And it's not like, it's like a pretty cartoonish reason, right? Like, he's a bad guy because of all of his, no pun intended, all of his shortcomings throughout his life. And there's some pretty interesting foreshadowings of that through the game. Like in basic braining, the very first level you do in the game, you come across a memory vault, and he openly tells you, like, go ahead and open that, I have nothing to hide. And you open it, and it's Oleander's pride, and it's him like going through all these military campaigns and being a successful man in the military. And then if you go back to that world with the cobweb duster, there's a vault that's hidden behind one of those mental cobwebs. And once you take out that cobweb and you open that vault, you find out he was never in the military. He got kicked out of every place he went to because he was short and chubby.
Mm-hmm.
And like the memories that he pushed on you to view, claiming he had nothing to hide, they were completely falsified. And you find out that he's lived this miserable life, and it's kind of just led him to want to seek world domination. Which again, it's really cartoony, but I think the motivations there are really good.
Well, it's a common theme throughout the entire game, is that pretty much everybody has a backstory that you're digging up as you go through their perspective levels. So by the time you get to that, it's kind of no surprise that there's more to Oleander than the big villain. You know that there's going to be some quote-unquote demon that you're going to have to massage out for the final level.
We'll obviously talk more about it when we start talking about our favorite, our the levels and our favorite ones and whatnot. But like a lot of a person's psyche is really reflected in the level design. Mia is very stuck in the 70s, and her mind is a groovy dance party. But she's a teacher, so it's also a training course. Same with Oleander, and similar with Sasha 9, how it's supposed to be a firing range. And then you get to a character like Boyd, and he is like a huge conspiracy theorist, and you kind of envision this board with yarn connecting different things, and you go out to the level proper, and it's all twisted and wild, and you have certain points connecting with others. It's genius, but we'll talk more about that when we get there. But yeah, with Oleander, it's just, I love the foreshadowing of how if you do go back and you open that second memory vault, and you find out that like the mind that he's projecting for everyone to come into is totally falsified. The battleground, that first vault that he tells you to open, even the figments, it's all fake. He made it entirely, and the only true part of that level is the very end, where you find the hallway with the blueprint behind the curtains, and it's for the psychic death tank. I just think that's so cool.
It's pretty cool that he's one of the few minds that seem to have control over itself, whereas the others, like, it seemed like their minds were kind of all over the place, and you were just kind of like peeking into it.
I would say the instructors are the same way too. I mean, one of the few, and the instructors, the 3 teachers that you do go into the minds of, they are the most well constructed. They have their shit ostensibly together, except for arguably Sasha's. But but also you could argue that it's entirely intentional. It's still a training ground, so the chaos of it is meant to be controlled chaos. I think that might even be something he says.
Also,
anyway.
Speaking of the foreshadowing that you mentioned, I was wondering, it was one of the earlier levels where I was just like punching a piece of steak, and I was like, why is there steak here? Like, what is happening? And then you don't find out till the end of the game that like Oleander's dad was a butcher.
I did not piece that together. That's a good catch.
Yeah. There's a few things that I actually had to read up on and kind of understand, because like with things regarding Dr. Lobato and the brain tumbler experiment, I was kind of confused.
That's
like, well, wait
called.
A second. Yeah. And I was like, well, wait a second. Like, if we're in Razz's mind, there shouldn't be meat here. And then in reading, I found out that the brain tumbler was actually kind of it's not perfect, and it was kind of forming psychic links with Oleander's mind as well, which is why Lobato was there, which is why Razz saw Lobato taking out the children's brains. It was he was forming that link with Oleander because this was the main reason. If you're out exploring the camp and you get close to one of the loudspeakers, you hear Oleander is sleeping.
Yeah.
Throughout the entire day during the daytime when you're in the camp. That's how that psychic link gets formed. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Is he's sleeping, so his mind is left to wander, and the brain tumbler experiment is picking that up and kind of merging Razz and Oleander's minds, like even before they merge for the meat circus at the end. I'm gonna say this a lot, but so cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of.
Go on. No.
I was just gonna say there's a lot of conversations that are completely optional to stumble upon that if you kind of just rush through the game, you don't appreciate. And I feel like I paid attention to a lot of them, including one of the characters rambling for like 20 minutes. That was very worth listening to. I forgot what his name is.
Is it the guy with that has like the nasally droning voice?
Yeah, he was like, I went to
that's Vernon.
Yeah, that sounds about right. He was rambling about like literally nothing for 20 minutes, but I was like, oh my God, like I gotta listen to this. And I listened to all of it until he looped back and told the story all over again to the girls. But anyway, yeah, you learn a lot more about the characters by listening to the optional conversations, by exploring the camp. And I wish I would have done more of that to get more of an idea of who these characters are. But I did get some of it, and it's really good. I just wish I would have spent more time.
Well, and it's also it's especially tricky because some of those will pop up and they're totally missable, but they'll pop up in between levels. So like after you finish the first brain tumbler experiment, you can go out into the camp. Like during that whole section, like you're in Sasha's lab and you can do the brain tumbler experiment, then you do his level, then you do the brain tumbler experiment again. And in between each of those steps, you can go back out into the camp and you can find new scenes with the campers. That are otherwise completely missable, and just get like these cute little backstories between the campers, who's in a relationship, who's beating up and bullying who, what these kids did yesterday. That
God, what was the name of the kid who kills all the squirrels? Or
Dogen.
Dogen.
Yeah, the first one that loses his brain. Whoever voice acted that kid, oh man, it was so
I love Dogen so much.
That was like that was probably some of the funniest stuff in the game, was just his scenes because of the voice actor. The voice acting was so like, it was, I don't want to say deadpan, but like he maintained that tone, like so that it almost kind of like Patrick in like a SpongeBob episode. Where he's just so, even though the character isn't necessarily stupid, because the voice just remains constant and there's no like reaction. It's like he's just like whatever, stupidly responding and almost ignorant of what's going on around them.
Yeah, and I love that the blonde little girl that has a crush on Nil, who's like totally just peering at girls all the time. She like is telling him all her problems, and he's just there like, Yeah,
he's the one that's the guy that's always standing by the girl's window, like yeah.
He's into the ladies. Yeah. But okay, we're jumping around.
Yeah.
What were we talking about? We're talking about Oleander. So how did you guys feel about the only, like, besides the camp, I would say that this is the only actual level. I wouldn't even call the camp a level because it's more like a hub that you can explore. But the asylum at the end is kind of like the only real world level, because it actually has like obstacles that you need to traverse in order to move forward. The camp, you just kind of run around. There's not really anything to overcome. The asylum is something to overcome. How did you guys feel about climbing the asylum?
It was fine until some platform stuff that like I had to like stand on this ledge on the side to like jump up to a higher point. I couldn't figure that out for the longest time, so I spent more time in this game honestly figuring out what to do than actually doing, and that really annoyed me.
I think that is like more old school. Like I always hearken like Metal Gear Solid to being the same way, and Silent Hill. those games, the length for the first playthrough is always going to be like the longest one, right? Because it's the playthrough where the length is kind of um the length is kind of indicative of how long it takes you to figure things out, right? And any playthrough you go back to in the end or later, you're gonna do it in a fraction of the time because you know what to do, you know where to go, you know what has to be done, where it has to be done. So, yeah, I agree. I was even surprised at how much I like in sections of the climbing the asylum. I was like, there's no clear path on how to move forward. I'd get on like a ledge and I'm like, where the fuck do I jump to now? I don't actually know.
Yeah.
I realized a little late that there were some nets that you could climb on, and I like, or not nets, but like,
bars.
like
They were like crossbars between the concrete. Yeah.
crossbars. Yeah. Thank you. It was like shit like that you could climb on. I realized that way too late.
See that this brings up an interesting example of something of its time versus like something how it's aged versus intuitive design. So you could use this asylum level for both instances. So you were just talking about not knowing how to go, where to progress. I think a lot of that has to do with all of us now have been playing games for a couple decades, and as game design has gone on, a good example of this is, say, how Naughty Dog designs their levels. Use subtle color differences that you wouldn't really notice unless you're looking for them, but your eyes kind of intuitively are drawn away from the rest of the environment to it, so that you know where you're supposed to go to climb.
Yeah.
You see this in The Last of Us Part 2. You see it in all of their recent games. And this is something that is widespread throughout level design. Versus back then, everything kind of just blends together.
Well, I think Psychonauts sort of had that. It was more, it was like more pattern design than it was color coding, and color coding is a lot more obvious. If you see something that's yellow, that's the thing that you can climb. With this,
I'm not even talking about that. It's just the subtle colorations of things. Like, it's not even that big of a difference. I know exactly what you're talking about, where like they'll make something like a bright color so you instantly look towards. But it's like it's progressed so much over the course of the years that in The Last of Us 2, they'll use like different shades of gray one next to each other because they know the science behind the optics of what your eye will be drawn to, but you won't really know that you're drawn to it. It's a more psychological thing.
No, I get what you're saying. Delaila, go ahead.
Yeah.
No, I was gonna say, and adding to that, not just with color, but also camera pans. Like usually, a camera will pan a certain way to kind of give you an indication that you're gonna go that way. Or to add to it, you'll have to have done that mechanic in an easier, more obvious way in the beginning, where okay, I need to do this to get from point A to point B because I've done this before. Whereas this game, I feel like every level was so different that it was kind of hard to find a pattern that made things easier to find, which I'm okay with. But there were certain ones like that ledge one in the asylum where I was like, I've never had to do this, and I would have never known if I.
That brings up the other example I was going to use, something that is definitely part of the design and not. So what I was just talking about is just a matter of how games were at that time, like I was saying before. But what Delaila just brought up is part of the design is how much the camera will shift on its own randomly, and how much goddamn fucking clipping there is, especially when you're dealing with buildings and indoors. And the reason I laughed when Delaila brought up Mario 64 was because I specifically was going to mention like Mario 64 with 4 yellow buttons had a better camera than this game. Because at certain points in this game, your camera will literally just go behind a wall and you just cannot see anything. Your entire field of view will become a wall.
Especially apparent in the Luchador level, where like there were certain as you were avoiding the bull in a hallway, if you went in a certain like section, it would just pan all the way out to like this gate and you couldn't see where you were going. So yeah, once again, like just a product of its time, but also like you can tell not that many people like worked on this game. So like I'm not trying to like shit on this game, but
they were also trying to make it cinematic. They were trying to do something that wasn't that common at the time. Really, the game that kind of perfected this, I think, at that time would have been like the first God of War, where it did a lot of the same kind of camera movement things.
Well, God of
but
War
because
has
the
like
levers,
absolutely no camera control.
yeah, but I'm talking about the swinging and the panning as you're moving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the thing about God of War is that because the levels were so much more wide open, whereas in this game, a lot of it is like indoors or in tight spaces. So you just get that clipping naturally.
Yeah. I don't disagree with that. The other thing that I do want to make sure is brought up is that this was Double Fine's first game.
Right.
It was also, I believe, I'm pretty sure it was Tim Schafer. Besides like Grim Fandango was a 3D game. It wasn't just like a two-dimensional point and click adventure. It was 3D, but it was still just a point and click adventure. It wasn't like a 3D platformer. This was kind of the first foray into a 3D platformer for him and for that studio, and it was also their first game. And not for nothing, but it had lots of like funding difficulties, like I brought up in the history lesson. So like not to completely forgive them for a lot of the unaddressed bugs, because there are a lot.
You're just describing. You're just putting out the descriptive reason for like why it is. It's like that's you have to understand. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. But I don't disagree with any of that. There's actually in an Easter egg time in Lungfishopolis. If you go to Skyscraper Island, there's a specific building where if you go to like the 5th window up and you pan the camera around so it clips behind a wall or a mountain, one of the developers put a photo of his girlfriend hidden behind that mountain, and if you pull the camera, you can see it.
Wow.
Which is just a really cool random Easter egg.
That is cool. And yeah, you could tell it's a smaller team because even at the end credits, they show a picture of all of them sitting together, and it's not that many people.
I think if I remember correctly from my research, it was about 41 people in the studio, including contractors, and then there were other outside contractors and things like that they had to hire, obviously. But yeah, early 2000s, it was a small team. There's lots of reasons for the things.
Like you mentioned with God of War, like I think one of the reasons why they're so much more successful with that style of camera work is specifically because they took away control of the camera from the player. In this game, you often feel like you're fighting the camera, and I think that's the core issue.
Yeah,
I don't disagree. Okay, we back to story.
Yeah, keep getting drawn.
Yeah. Climbing the asylum, but yeah, by the way, my all that stuff aside, my least favorite part of the climbing the asylum are those damn rats.
Oh god, yeah.
They were like the worst part.
And they never stopped spawning.
No.
And this is something that annoyed me too, because at first I was shooting them, but they still explode and they do so much damage and they confuse you and whatnot. And then I saw online later that you can just burn them and they don't explode.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, how does that intuitively make sense?
Well,
and I mean, it's. Oh, go on.
What you mean from the concept of how does lighting them on fire make them not explode?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, like, I guess, yeah. I do feel like there's like a lot of experimentation to be had with like the psi powers that you get.
That's the part I liked about it.
Yeah,
but, like,
I like that, but I simultaneously, at some points, it frustrated me, just because
like the game just
things didn't work.
Yeah, well, I mean, I never felt it was that. I never felt that way. I felt like if you did try, like it did work, it just in the right scenarios. But I think the bigger problem is the game never really forces you to like think differently about how you tackle. Like the enemy variety isn't quite there. Most of the enemies you fight level per level are sensors, and they all pretty much function the same way. The Waterloo level had like an interesting enemy with like those walking cannons where you could attack them and then you could use pyrokinesis to completely blow them up and stop them, which I think is one of, if not the most creative general enemies in the game.
I think that whole level was the best use of the powers. Yeah. Like I thought. Yeah. But we'll get into the levels later. Yeah.
Switching between like pyrokinesis, telekinesis, levitation. Like there was lots of power switching in that level. But okay, getting to the top of the tower, you trick. You wind up tricking Dr. Lobato. Good lord. You wind up tricking him with and you saving Mr. Pokelope, which by the way, once you get Mr. Pokelope, the turtle, if you go back to the camp, you can interact with every single child. As long as you've gotten all the kids' brains back, you can interact with each one, and they have something unique to say about Mr. Pokelope if you show him to them.
Don't worry about a damn thing. Yeah, that's one of the
so many missable things in the game. And yeah, how did you guys like Mr. Pokelope?
Yo, he's so funny.
Yeah.
Did you 100% this game at all, Mark?
Back in the day, I didn't do it this time. I came close, but I didn't. I might dabble a little more. I think I'm like Psy rank 97 or 98.
Okay, because there was like this.
Close.
Because I didn't plan to 100% it because I was so annoyed by it, but and there were no achievements attached to it, so I didn't get any reward for my work. But there was this secret ending. I don't want to say it if you haven't done it, but I did look it up. Yeah, okay. It's
I didn't even know that. I'm gonna get spoiled on my own Spoilercast. What is this?
Yo, you're not gonna go ahead and get all the figments.
No, I'm not. Yeah, you guys can talk about it. I don't care.
Some of the figments are a pain in the. I haven't watched it recently. So go ahead and talk about it. Well, hold on,
Mr.
Let's get the
about Mr. Pokelope.
We keep getting sidetracked. Yeah.
It's about Mr. Pokelope though.
All right, go ahead. What's
Mr. Pokelope is the fish's husbando.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. What's her name? Linda?
Linda.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is funny. Just
yeah.
She's all like, "Oh, I'm ugly and fat now. Stop it!" And he's like, "Oh, I still like you, baby." It's just like he's the best.
Yeah, the voice acting was spot on. When I was playing it last night, my fiance came in the door from work and she's like, "Oh wow!" She was like instantly drawn to it. She doesn't play video games or anything, but like she thought I was like watching a movie, like a anime, like Shrek or something. Yeah, the voice acting was spot on.
Amazing.
All right, so yeah, you rescue Mr. Pokelope. I can't stand Shigor, but like
neither can I.
She's hardly in the game for very long, which I guess is a good thing. I don't really like her though. But you rescue. I feel like she's pretty unremarkable. We can just honestly keep going. You rescue Mr. Pokelope. You rescue Sasha and Mia and Lily, and Oleander shows up, and they think they've taken him out. Oh, and Ford Cruller has like I love that he can't leave his underground base because his mind would be so scrambled without the Titanium. So he just straps some to his back and then flies out. I thought that was so badass.
That was funny.
Yeah, I really, really like Ford Cruller.
Same.
But they think that they've taken out Oleander, and his brain gets into one of the brain tanks. How'd you guys feel about that brain tank fight?
I thought it was cool the way it made you utilize the powers, and again, like whenever a running theme, at least for me throughout this, will be whenever the game de-emphasized platforming and focused on puzzle solving and switching between your powers, was when I thought it really, really shined.
And I thought,
in terms of gameplay.
I thought that boss fight probably did it the best of all the others. I can't think of another one that like you had to like switch between the pyrokinesis and.
Before we move on though, because you skipped over this point of how the tower explodes and you get to the tank fight.
Oh yeah, Boyd.
Tim Schafer, the writing for this is so on point. How everything comes together and interweaves, because each of the Asylum mates like contributes in a different funny way to the ultimate explosion of the tower, and then the boys just like, "Hey, you guys want to share a taxi?" And like all the Asylum inmates, after they inadvertently blew up the Asylum, just take off.
Yeah.
No, it's good to bring up.
The one guy breaks the gas tank, and the other one turns on the spout for the gas, and the other one just throws a Molotov cocktail. It all just comes together. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I think, and going back to the boss fights, not even so much switching powers, but just like using them in creative ways. I think all the bosses do that really well, except for like the first boss, which I know we'll talk about because Delaila had a lot of
Oh
frustration
yeah.
with that boss. And it's the first boss. You only have the one power at the time. Like it kind of makes
Hmm.
sense that one's not going to be too creative. But I think all the other ones are. And we'll talk about those. Some of them even being like they're almost like Zelda bosses, in that you get like an item during a dungeon, and then you have to use that item on the boss. Coach Amara comes to mind, where you get the shield ability during the level, and then you have to use it during the boss fight in order to beat him. But anyway, yeah, beating the tank, Razz accidentally winds up getting his brain removed by sneezing it out. And how did did you guys how did you guys like the brainless, the instantaneous like brainless reaction once you lose your brain? The first thing you want to go find is TV.
TV, yeah.
Do you guys get a kick out of that?
Yeah, that's. I mean,
Goes back to that brilliant writing.
I'm
But
glad it wasn't a video game.
the only way the only way to get out of that situation, what do you do? You just toss your brain into the brain tank with Oleander, and you fully create that psychic link. Because what are the two brains gonna do other than do that? And
again, another interesting use of your abilities, because you have to levitate yourself.
Did you use levitate?
Yeah, I use levitate to throw myself. No, or not levitate. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Telekinesis. Sorry.
I was gonna say, can you use
by
levitation?
By levitate myself, I meant.
No, yeah.
I didn't mean like yeah. You know what I meant.
Got it. Well,
Imagine you could just
levitate, roll your brain, and brain is rolling on the ball.
I was about to be like, wait, you can do that? Because I thought you had to use telekinesis. Holy shit!
Now I'm curious if you can.
Yeah, let's go replay the game again, guys. Let's go find out.
I'm good.
So yeah, the meat circus. It's a meld. You come to find out that Oleander's childhood, he was this like plucky little kid, and he loved bunnies, and he had this pasture with a bunch of rabbits, and his dad was a butcher that hated cute things and just murdered rabbits in front of him. And Razz's past in the circus, the thing that he ran away from to become a psychonaut. You get this meshing of the two, and it's like it's fucking horrifying. Like it's the grossest
awesome.
level in the game. It is cool. It's cool as shit, but it's like gross.
Like from just a concept level, and especially on a writing level, because essentially what it is both the villain and the hero exercising their demons at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So like from on paper, like it's fucking awesome. Execution. This is the point at which I had to stop playing for a while because I was about to smash my controller. Yeah,
that level was really.
Yeah, and there's there's always been a lot of criticism leveled at the meat circus, and I feel like pretty much all of it is justified. It's just a huge. In playing it again, I actually had. I didn't have as much trouble as I was anticipating, which says a lot about how I feel about that level. I was anticipating having a miserable time, and I wound up having a less miserable time than I was expecting. But it's just so punishing. There's like the two main sections of it. There's the section where you're escorting Oleander and going up and helping him to catch the bunny and keeping him from getting mauled by the demon, like the gross demon bunnies and shit. And then there's the section where you're running the acrobatic obstacle course that your demented evil father is forcing you to do. And they're both just like, if you fail, fucking good luck. You're doing it all again. The obstacle course is actually a little less punishing than I remember it being, but yeah, it was really fucking frustrating.
I'm so glad that before that level, I went to increase my mental health in the camp, because if I would have had less mental health, like health period. That's what the health is called.
You had to go back. I was able to just turn everything in the actual meat source. There's like a guide.
Oh,
at the
right.
beginning.
Sorry. Yeah. No, you're
Yeah,
right.
you could.
There was like a tent that you could go to.
And
You're right.
and
Yeah.
the reason for that is because and this is something that this is probably my least favorite thing about the game. Once you turn in Pokelope to Shigor, you kind of create a point of no return. And
It says it, but it doesn't give you a choice to go. Yeah, it doesn't give you a choice.
Yeah,
to
it just
forward.
starts playing the cutscene.
There is an autosave that saves right before there, and that'll always be there, I think, until you create it again. So, like, it does give you.
But still, you could just say like
it kind
It
of
just
sucks.
says this is a point of no return. Are you sure you want to go forward? Oh, who cares? Go forward. Like,
yeah, it doesn't really give you that option, and it's kind of silly, right? After you beat the game, you're back in the real world. So, like, why couldn't I just keep exploring the camp if I wanted to? It is silly, and I definitely don't like that, but it is what it is. But yeah, the fucking meat circus, it's just really, it's really punishing. It's really it feels really unfair at times. They're throwing a lot at you, and like more than the game has ever thrown at you at once before, and even like new things like getting the sword throwers to throw at the end of a spinning wheel so that you can grab on and swing. Like you've never had to do like a platforming challenge quite like that, where it's very situational.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Delaila.
No, I was just saying I can deal with a challenging like platforming experience, but my problem is most of the time it's like the camera screwed me over, like the jump didn't work, and I just hate when things aren't responsive like that.
So that's what I wanted to bring up is that what frustrated me wasn't like the design of the levels and stuff, because I knew exactly what I had to do. It wasn't like a mystery that I had to let the guy throw a knife at the thing and grab on.
It's not that it was even a mystery. It was just like it was just difficult to do, and there were times where there was so much more than just that happening, so it compounded it even further. And it's just such a jump, right? It's a huge jump in difficulty.
Well, for me, the difficulty was because, like Delaila was saying, I would constantly press X and wouldn't jump off the knife. I would constantly press X and it wouldn't double jump while I'm already in the air. It would be imprecise in the movement. And I don't know this for a fact. I didn't really test it. I should have researched it. But this game felt very much like Dark Souls 2, and a lot of other platformers from back in the day that it was made, and that you can only actually, even though you're using an analog stick, you can only actually move in 8 directions. So forward, back, right, left, and then diagonally. So that's what I think creates that feeling of imprecision when you're trying to like land jumps
I don't think that's the case with this game, but I don't disagree that it is that like a lot of the platform.
I also experienced a lot of input lag, which I was talking to you earlier. I think it actually might just have to do with the version we were playing. Because it might just be the PlayStation 4, how it emulates the PlayStation 2 game.
I mean,
that there's lag between input.
In general, this game has been ported a lot. It's had lots of different versions. From my understanding is that the PlayStation 4 version is the worst version you can play, which is unfortunate. And that's the last one I played before I played the original Xbox backwards compatible version on a Xbox One X. I played the PS4 version like 5 years ago, and I don't remember having many issues. But then again, I had a much harder time on the Meat Circus than I did this time when I just played it on the Xbox.
Yeah.
So maybe I was experiencing that stuff 5 years ago when I played that version. But yeah, the PS4 version is commonly considered the worst port, or the worst version that you can play, modern version that you can play. So and yeah, I don't think that it had the 8-directional movement. I think it was pretty much omnidirectional, but I don't disagree about the platforming being rough around the edges. I feel like it's one of the
that's just speculation on my part, by the way, to anybody listening. It just felt like it to me. That's all I was saying.
Like it's like the platforming's not. It's not terrible, right? It's serviceable. It's got issues. It's definitely flawed. And it definitely hopefully has seen significant more work for Psychonauts 2. From the footage I've seen, it looks everything from platforming to combat looks so much more refined. Which I should hope so in 2021 that that the game would be looking, much smoother. But
yeah, it's weird because there were some sections that the platforming worked perfectly fine, but more sections than not were just like frustrating and weird camera angles and sticky and just.
I think a lot of it from this game, just looking back and comparing it to its contemporaries. So I'm talking about things like Jak and Daxter, Ratchet and Clank, stuff like that. Notice when you think about those games, pretty much a vast majority of the levels are pretty wide open. Versus this game where there's a lot of indoor type close quarters going on.
Yeah.
And I think there's a fundamental design reason for that, which probably does have to do with camera control.
Yeah, I would say even the indoor levels of all three of those are more like put you in larger rooms so that you have more room to breathe.
Yeah.
There's exceptions obviously, but especially once you get into the sequels to some of those games, Sly 2, Jak 2, you start going into tighter areas. But also a point about, now that since you bring those up, since we've already kind of talked about it, those games were developed by first-party studios with Sony's backing.
Right.
This game, as we said, had
I will
lots
say
of
though,
funding issues.
If somebody acquires Double Fine and like future Psychonauts games, or maybe even this one, we don't know because it hasn't come out.
Microsoft did acquire Double Fine like 3
Oh,
years
they
ago.
did. Okay. So
Which it's really funny, they've kind of come full circle.
Yeah, if this financial assistance like helps have that level of smoothness that we're looking for in the platforming and the gameplay, it will definitely be one of the best 3D platformers because of the creativity and the voicing and the concept that goes into this game. It's definitely more sophisticated in my opinion than like Mario games or even Ratchet and Clank, which felt like a Pixar movie.
New Ratchet and Clank games do feel like a Pixar. If you
Yeah.
want like really good
old
Ratchet
school
and Clank,
Ratchet
go play
and
the
Clank,
original trilogy. But I agree with you, Delaila, for sure. And for the reasons you just laid out, that's why this game, in spite of it all, it's in my top 10 games because it's so creative. Because every time I play it, it makes me laugh, it makes me smile, it makes me, there's a lot of rose tinted glasses. There's a lot of nostalgia behind, because I played this game right when it came out and I adored it in spite of all of the difficulties I had playing it at times, the Meat Circus. I loved it. I couldn't get enough of it. But we keep jumping all over the place. Like Jason was saying, this final level is you resolving the demons of both the hero and the villain. It's mostly for the hero, and I feel like it should be.
Right.
Throughout the level, you're seeing like this ghostly figure kind of trying to break into the level. Did you guys? I assume you guys noticed that.
I noticed that the entire time, and I just thought it was like an aspect of the level, just because of all the crazy shit you see throughout the game. I didn't really like. It kind of. I was actually genuinely surprised when it was a story thing.
It was Oleander's like mind, like
no,
it has something to do with the mind melding.
It was Razz's dad trying to enter or project himself into the world so that he could help Razz. It was Razz's real dad, I should say.
Not his.
You run into Razz's dad, and even when Razz's real dad pops in, he's like, "Is this really what you think of me?" And he's like evil and crazy and demented. And
I completely called that from the beginning of the game, that was kind of where it was going to end, where like what Razz thought of his dad in the beginning is totally untrue. What he says about his dad in the beginning is going to be totally untrue by the end. You can call that, but it's like when you call like what's going to happen, going back to the Shrek reference. When you watch Shrek, you know how the story is going to end, but it's the journey, how you get there, and all this,
And yeah, he breaks in. You find out that he doesn't hate psychics. He's psychic himself.
Yeah, exactly.
He just kind of wants to shield Razz from the he's overprotective, right? He's just
Hmm.
overprotective, and Razz took that as more he hates him and just wants to make him suffer in the circus for the rest of his life. And it's like, no, he loves him. He just he loves him so much that he just doesn't want him to get hurt and to he doesn't want him to get hurt basically.
Did they
And
ever? Did they ever? Maybe I missed it. Did they resolve the whole "we are all cursed"? The gypsies cursed us to all die in water thing, or is that like just a loose
I mean,
thread, perhaps
that's
for future?
it's yeah, basically is a loose thread. I mean, it's just like a fact of their family. They were cursed to
Okay.
like die in water or
Also,
whatever.
like a convenient gameplay device. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's another thing I really want to bring up. Yeah, it really is because like they've really saved a lot by not having to give him swimming mechanics at the summer camp by just making him afraid of water, and it kind of creates when he goes into water, it creates this mental image of like something trying to grab him and pull him under, that he's genuinely afraid of. And I really like how they kind of reveal that to you, um where in Mia's mind, when there's the wheel of hazards and there's like electricity, there's fire, there's like poison or whatever, and then there's
Yeah.
water, and you levitate on all of them and none of them hurt you, but once you go onto water, the levitation ball goes away and Raz is terrified. And like
Yeah.
him and
Yeah.
Mia even have a conversation about it, and I think that's so clever and cool, and yeah. It's such a small detail that I just will always appreciate.
Totally.
Um but you overcome your father helps you break free of this perception you have of him. The evil dad like melds with the butcher, and they become like this butcher dad freak monster. The final boss, like, it's funny for how difficult that whole final level is. The final boss is like really easy. You just
Yeah.
kind
Yeah.
of
You beat
run
him in like
away
30
until
seconds. Yeah.
yeah, you run away until you become Big Razz, and then when you become Big Razz, he's like scared of you, and you just wail on him. It's
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's like it's epic, but it's also in a lot of ways disappointing considering how clever all the other boss fights are. Like maybe if you had to do something to build up your mental energy to become big again, rather than just run away and wait for your dad to help you, it could have been a more interesting fight. But you just kind of have to run away. I think that's disappointing compared to everything else.
Yeah, I agree.
But
But it was also kind of relieving. I was like, all right, I had enough of this shit. let's just let's just punch daddies out. These daddies.
uh but yeah, the minds are separated. Oleander, little Ollie is, thankful that you've helped him overcome his demons.
And his
Oleander,
bunny
once you're
that
back,
his dad wanted
huh?
to chop his dad wanted to chop up the bunny to eat, which I found really
Yeah.
funny. Of all the animals you can choose to butcher and eat.
But it's
Yeah.
yeah, and it's such a great dichotomy of his character. How as a kid he was like this plucky little kid that loved bunnies and like had this wimpy voice, and then
Yeah.
as an adult he's like this evil, like just
Militaristic.
angry man. Yeah, he's just so angry at the world, and like you would never expect the child version of him to be like that, and it's just very
The
it's
Jungian shadow, man. What you suppress comes back even stronger.
yeah.
But
Um,
damn, hearing his voice in that meat circus level when you're like constantly falling or whatever
yeah.
is so
What were you screaming
traumatizing for
like?
me. Yeah, he's like,
Mhm.
He's getting attacked by
ouch,
the
ouch.
demon
And
rabbit,
it's like over and over again. I'm like, Jesus, shut the fuck up.
and then if you
Kid.
It's
fall,
annoying when you're trying to get. It's more so annoying because you're trying to get up there and you can't control what the fuck is going up there. Yeah.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. Again, it's one of the biggest reasons I say it's so punishing is because if you fall, you have to fucking listen to that shit for until he dies, and then you have to do it
Yeah.
all over. Um. Okay, yeah, you come back to the real world. Razz becomes a psychonaut. Oleander apologized. Oh, I love when everyone's leaving, Razz and Lily have their kiss.
That's fucking weird.
Yeah.
They're kids. Like, what the hell?
You find out that her dad, who's the head of the Psychonauts, has been kidnapped, and Oleander's immediate reaction is like, "It wasn't me. I was here. You saw me." And then you find out that they have like a fucking X-Men jet, and they all hop in it to go save Lily's dad, and that's the end of the game.
Yeah, so do we think we're gonna have that mission of saving her dad in Psychonauts 2? Or?
No, and this is the brief thing that I realized I should probably at least speak to briefly. We're not going to spend a lot of time on it. There was a VR game called Psychonauts in the Rhombus of Ruin that covers rescuing Lily's dad. Yeah. You have PSVR, or I think it's also on the HTC Vive. It's worth a playthrough. It's very short. It's not anything like this game, right? It has Psychonauts, like it's got the Psychonauts like filter on it, but it's basically a VR first person point and click adventure game, like straight up. There's no platforming, I don't even think there's combat. It's all just puzzle solving. And like kind of moving, like you spend a lot of time like using clairvoyance on things, and that's kind of how they help you to move around, is you use clairvoyance on a different thing to move throughout the world. Sorry, I just looked like a fucking robot on video doing that. And that's kind of how you progress through the game. It's really cool, it's really clever, and it's really not that long. And that takes place in between Psychonauts and Psychonauts 2. I think Psychonauts 2 is going to have like a video at the beginning that covers all the events of the first game and in the Rhombus of Ruin. So if you don't have any means to play it, you could probably just get whatever. I guess spoilers for the next 30 seconds if you just want to hear real quick about it. So spoilers for the next 30 seconds. Dr. Lobato is the one that kidnapped Lily's dad. You help him overcome his trauma, and you find out more about Lobato. Because Lobato, he's kind of a throwaway villain at the end of the.
He's the only one that we don't really like see.
So his past is kind of explored in the game. He overcomes.
That's
you
cool.
help him overcome his demons, and you leave rescuing Lily's dad. Lily's dad finds out that Razz and Lily are dating, and Lobato is stowed away. He stows away on the jet as they leave. That's in the Rhombus of Ruin in 30 seconds.
Okay. Thanks.
So yeah, it'll be covered at the beginning of Psychonauts 2 if you care enough. But it is worth a playthrough. It's really cool. Okay. We've basically covered the big story beats, I'd say, of Psychonauts. So we can we could talk about some characters. I mean, what'd you guys think of Razz as a hero? Did you like him? He's kind of just a teenager.
He's just kind of like a stock hero's journey, naive, out to do something with his life. You know, it's the Luke Skywalker hero's journey archetype.
Yeah, he was the least interesting of all the other characters because.
No, I thought it was fine. Like, I mean, that's kind of the point. I mean, they even like. I was gonna mention the music at the end when he becomes and it's the same music every time he gets a new merit badge,
but it's in a different
literally
game.
It's literally almost the same exact progression as the finale music when Luke and Han get their medals at the end of A New Hope. Which that's why I found it funny that Tim Schafer worked at LucasArts.
Okay.
It also makes a lot of sense because the overall aesthetic and art style of this game draws a lot from like old 1930s comics and pulp stuff, not just superhero but like secret agent stuff.
Yeah.
So just really cool. But as for Razz, I mean, there's not like a whole lot to say because he's supposed to kind of be generic, which works.
Yeah, I mean, I think
his voice was cool though. It was very 90s, like very 90s cartoon.
I believe he was voiced by shit. Now I gotta look this up real fast. He was voiced by. Oh my god, I can't seem to find it.
Well, he needs to stop kissing people's brains. I feel like that's unsanitary.
Oh yeah, that's Oh, He's voiced by Richard Stephen Horvitz, who voiced in he voiced Zim in Invader Zim. That's it.
Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, that's like his like yeah. He voiced Zim.
Oh shit. I see it now. Wow. Okay.
And yeah,
Zim isn't quite. I thought Zim. Yeah, Zim's early 2000s, right?
Something like that. Yeah.
Oh, that was like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, same general idea.
Yeah, Razz is. He's like. Yeah, I would say he's the most generic. He's the kid that comes to the summer camp to actually learn. But he does have his own personality. He adopts like.
Yeah, sure.
He adopts like Bobby Zilch's like victory thing, like the he adopts that as his own. And he does like the typical teenager thing. The people that you're around, you kind of adopt their personality traits, but he's also there, like he's the kid that's there to learn because he wants to learn. He wants to become a psychonaut. He's probably the most sheltered out of all the kids there, and it kind of comes through.
Yeah, when I say generic, I'm not trying to. That's not to like say it's bad. I'm just saying it's like straightforward, like exactly what you're saying. Like he's the hero. He wants more than what he had in his life at the circus. Like he's looking at the twin moon sunset. I'm sorry, I use Star Wars references in almost every fucking episode.
It's fine. You're literally wearing a Star Wars shirt.
I'm wearing a Star Wars shirt. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And that's fine. I don't disagree. Generic's not a bad thing. It's not. If anything, I put in our notes. I put in our notes asking if he's relatable because I feel like he is relatable.
Yes, very much so. Tropes are tropes because they work. A lot of people like don't understand tropes aren't a bad thing, but
right.
I love how in the Asylum level when you're trying to save Sasha and Lily and Mia, you could just keep going up to Lily, like because he could hear her thoughts and can hear that she wants to like kiss him or whatever. Mm-hmm. And if you keep going up to her, he's like, oh, so like open mouth or like closed mouth, and like he keeps going up to her and like. So you want to do this like about that makeout, and that was like the most like quirky moment he had. Otherwise, he was just like pretty.
I also love how she's always reading his mind after they're talking together, and she and she knows that he's reading his mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another cool detail is once you get clairvoyance, you can use clairvoyance on pretty much every character that you can use it on, and they all have like they all mostly have like a different way in which they view Razz. And like Lily's at the end, if you use clairvoyance on her, she views Razz as like a knight with a sword and everything, and he's like because he's her knight that's come to save her. If you use it on Sasha, he views Razz as a smaller Sasha. Which is cute.
I never even thought to do that. That's so cool.
And like if you use it on Fred Bonaparte, like he like sees Razz as like a Napoleon like type character. Right. If you use it on
the little girl in the Milkman Conspiracy level, she sees him as the Milkman, right? Or because every time I looked at her, I saw the Milkman.
It might have been the Milkman, or it might have been one of the spy. I think it was one of the spies. She views him as one of the spies.
Okay.
If you use it on Gloria, like she just sees him as like an autograph, like a note with a pen, as if she's about to give an autograph, or a picture with a pen, like something like that. Like it's cool if you there's so much little details that you can find, just by creative use of powers and just like taking out random items and interacting. With characters while holding them and stuff. It's really cool. What was your guys' like before we get into levels, what was your guys' like favorite character? Favorite character, I guess, really overall.
Director Ford.
Yeah. It's kind of not hard not to choose him, especially because he has all these like alternate egos.
Yeah. How many times did you guys use Bacon?
Very rarely.
Towards the end, like more often, yeah.
Okay. I had to use it a couple times.
Here's the thing, right? Yeah. I wish I would have known about Bacon earlier, or like that they told me more about Bacon, because there were times where I was stuck and all I had to do was eat bacon, and he would tell me what to do. And I was like, oh, I was stuck all this time, like in the theater. All I had to do was talk to homeboy up there, like,
Yeah.
and he was like, why don't you go talk to that fat guy up on the thing? And I was like, oh, for real?
Yeah.
Or like he would tell you how to fight different enemies and stuff like that if you like didn't know how to like what ability to use.
I completely forgot it was a thing. That's why it's not like I didn't use it because I didn't need it. I just completely forgot it was there. But I remember at one point accidentally using it, and like he pokes out a ear, and I know bacon, like, and I was just like, this character's fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's he's great. And yeah, the multiple personalities, it's because his mind is all scrambled when he's away from the Titanium. So he goes out into a certain area and he thinks he's someone else. And it's from it all goes back to that writing. It's just so good. I kind of want to.
Oh, before we leave Ford, I just want to mention one of the things that really endeared me to him was the cart that you use as fast travel, and the cart assumes you're Ford, and some of the things it says, like, "Are you going to get me a burger this time?"
Yeah.
It's like very implying some very mature things.
Let's go to Ford's. I mean, my sanctuary. Yes, noble psycho master.
Yeah.
I want to talk about Sasha and Mia a little bit, because in their minds there's some details you can find, like Sasha's memory vaults. You find out that his mother died when he was very young, and it left his father, and his father was a shoe cobbler. That's why when you said he was obsessed with shoes, I was like, wait, what? And then I remembered there's the side with the shoes, and I'm like, oh, that's because his dad was a cobbler, so shoes were a big part of his life growing up. But yeah, you find out she passed away, and you all. I think there's also there's a memory where you can find like Sasha finding like something regarding his parents having sex and him being like traumatized by that. I think that's in one of the memory vaults somewhere. Yeah, if I recall, there's something about that.
I think I got two in there, because when I got all the duffel bags or whatnot, the other one was like him trying to draw something for Mia to like show his love or whatever.
There is I think both Sasha and Mia, maybe just Mia, has like a memory about her and Sasha.
Mia has one too. No, there are two, because Mia has one that actually shows their like missions they go out on together.
Yeah. Okay.
And then there's the picture of her. They land ground and she's on top of him. Yeah.
Now, did you guys find the secret room in Mia's world?
No, I don't think so.
This is the backstory, and again, it goes back to like the same like design with Coach Oleander and Basic Braining. How behind a mental cobweb he has that vault that he's keeping away that actually has the truth. Mia has a secret room where she's not like she's hiding it away even from herself. And it's like really dark and a really tragic story for her. It's in the first section, like the first like subsection of her level. If you like, instead of like you know that area where there's like the thing that's blowing you forward to a ladder, and you use levitation to get blown forward. Yeah, if you instead of doing that, if you look down and to the right, there's a secret room you can go into, and it's like dimly lit, and there's a memory vault in there. And as soon as you enter that room, Mia starts talking to you, because you're in her mind, and she's interacting with you guys the whole time because you're there for training. So you walk in there, and she's immediately like, "Oh, darling, you don't want to be in there. There's come out here where the party is." You open the memory vault, and you find out it's called Mia's Children, and you find out Mia had like eight kids, and they were all super young, and she loved them. She was their mother and everything. And one day she goes out grocery shopping, and she comes home, and the house is on fire.
Oh, wow.
And all of her kids die in that house fire. And it doesn't end there. There's a chest there's like a big chest in the room, and you hit that and it opens up, and there's like a red glowing light that comes out of it, and then she chimes in again. She's like, "Oh, darling, you definitely don't want to go in there. There's nothing happy in there. Come out where the party is." If you jump into that chest, you basically jump into a room that's on fire with these like demonic looking things all around that are just crying out for Mia, saying like, why did you let us die? And
Oh,
they're whispering and like
shit.
shrieking and stuff. And it's really fucking dark.
That's crazy.
Oh yeah, I didn't even know that was a
I
thing.
kind of wish I would have.
Yeah,
Yeah, I didn't go back after I
I
got the cobweb thing to go because you need it to progress at a certain
Yeah.
point.
yeah.
I never went back,
Well,
even though I knew
you
that
didn't
there was
need the
stuff. Yeah.
you didn't need the cobweb duster to find that room. So you could have found that room with or without it.
Oh,
Yeah.
It's yeah, hopefully I mean I should have probably said like, hey, if you haven't seen this, skip ahead 2 minutes because it's a really fucking cool detail and it's really fucking dark, but um this is a spoiler cast. Oh well.
yeah.
Yeah, no,
Um
I'm glad you told me because I would have never known otherwise. It's not like I'm gonna
Yeah.
go
yeah.
back to the game.
The first time I discovered it too, I was like, "Oh my god."
Yeah.
I was
Mhm.
very, very like
You would think
it's
she would have been the one to have world
That's
domination. It's worse than like getting bunnies killed, I think.
yeah,
it's stuff like that that probably got this game a T rating.
Yeah.
I mean, even there's also lots of references to like, making out
Because
and like
well,
there's
most
lots
of
of
the stuff
sexual
is like
themes and stuff
very
too.
yeah, but most of that stuff is very implied.
Yeah.
Where and there's a lot of inference to it. Where like if you're a kid, you have no idea really what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Um, that's why I made the Shrek comparison earlier because
Yeah.
Shrek does the same thing.
Well, that's the thing with a lot of kids movies is like a good kids movie will also have jokes that only adults can relate to and understand and get.
Yes.
You watch a good kids movie, the kids and the adults are laughing at completely different things. But
Yeah.
Yes.
that's kind of the thing, right? This isn't really a kids game and it's not really an adults game. It really does fit that T rating and that it's I mean, I played it as an early teenager and I still got a lot out of it and I still get a lot out of it today. So it fits that in between very well. Um
Mhm.
but yeah, I really want to talk about that with Mia because her backstory, like each character has like such a good backstory. Like you think about
Mhm.
Boyd and when you're in Boyd's mind and these memory vaults, they're so important. With Boyd, you find out that he was a security guard and he wound up getting fired and it kind of he didn't take it very well and he wound up burning the place he got fired from down. And then you find another one where he got hired as a security guard for this insane asylum while he was in the insane asylum.
Yeah.
um
We
and
should
then like
also because we almost every game we play, we have to bring up my judgments on collectibles
oh
for
yes,
lore.
thank you.
Yeah.
The Kwasnicki test.
The Kwasnicki
Or
test.
the Jason test. I'm sorry, the
I
Jason
actually
test. The Jason test.
I actually think this is one of the better ones. I still don't like that. In order to really understand what's going on in any given level, you do need to see all of them, and like I mean all of them. So because some of them, the first ones you'll get are misleading until you read the later ones and understand the full context. Because
Say,
it might be an untrustworthy narrator type of situation.
I would say
Um,
the only one that's untrustworthy is Oleander's. I think it's more so that they're all
Edgar's
only.
too. Because
Yeah, that's a good point. That's true. You're right.
But in terms of how they're actually implemented, I love that they're just little picture books that take a few seconds to flip through. It's like 5 pictures. You're being fed. It's a visual. Video games are a visual medium. You're being fed the information visually and processing it very quickly. And you, as opposed to having to read giant paragraphs like a novel or an essay, like you just flip through a few pages, see the pictures, you get the story. Bam, you get some background knowledge and
Yeah.
I like how it's tied in like lore wise. There's a reason for that because these are literally vaults with people's memories in it in their brain. It's just very well executed. So I did really like that.
And I guess this is a good opportunity for me to jump into the collectibles and how intelligently I think most of them are implemented. So those memory vaults are basically viewfinders, and you just kind of you click through the memories and you get all the information you need just from the pictures that they show. It's really smart. They're figments of someone's imagination. Most of them are fitting for the situation they're in. Like Coach Oleander's has like a bunch of like war things all throughout, and also monsters strewn about for some reason. But like Mia's has like lots of party stuff, and Sasha's has just lots of like tacky items and stuff from his history. The Waterloo level has like apple figments sitting in the trees, and if you like whack the trees, they fall out and you can collect them. And lots of other like war stuff in that level too. It's just really cool how they incorporated the figments into the world, and collecting them helps you rank up. But like we'll talk about progression when we get there. But I just think the collectibles are so intelligently implemented. Mental cobwebs. They're just like in dusty corners of the mind, maybe trying to hide something away.
Emotional baggage.
Emotional baggage. That is so fucking cool. You have to sort through someone's emotional baggage. And that one I think has the best reward. It gives you concept art, which can be really fucking interesting to look through. It's great. It's really, really great.
And also silly. You know, it's not just like intelligent, it's also mad funny how you like the little tag rubs against the bag and then a little tune plays and the bag's not crying anymore. It's happy. It's so silly. You could skip it. I skipped it, but it was
It's also
funny
a good design element that one's in the area because you can hear it crying. Yeah.
Totally.
The only other thing I'll say about collectibles, well, a couple things. The real world collectibles I felt were lacking, except for one specific thing. Well, I thought Psy cards and Psy challenge markers made no sense. It felt like they just needed something to help you rank up, and you had to put some effort into it. And stylistically, they didn't really fit. Like, I don't really know what playing cards have to do with ranking up your psychic level. What the psi cores, the eyeballs, how that fits in. It's kind of nonsensical to me. It fits with the aesthetic, but it doesn't really fit with the theme, if that makes sense. And then the arrowheads as a currency, because the summer camp is built on an ancient psychic Indian burial ground or whatever. Is you know, it's funny.
Well,
it's
I thought in reality like an asteroid crashed or something like that.
Well, the titanium was underneath the Indian burial ground.
Yeah.
And the arrowheads became like soaked with titanium or whatever, or like infused with titanium because of that titanium underneath the ground. It's a funny little contrived way to give you some sort of currency like that. I think the only collectible in the real world space that was genuinely fantastic was the scavenger hunt items. Because each one has like flavor text. A lot of them are puzzles that you have to solve in order to collect them. Like in the kids' cabin area, there's a hidden tunnel you can find, and in there is just this random refrigerator, and inside the refrigerator is the turkey sandwich, but it's frozen in a block of ice. So you need to go back when you have pyrokinesis to melt the ice, and boom, you have your first scavenger item. You have the turkey sandwich.
A lot of Zelda-like elements.
Like there's a miner skull in the GPC area, and that's like kind of stuck in a geyser, so you have to go back when you have the shield to prevent the other geyser from coming up, so the pressure shoots the skull out.
Like
you need
the comic book down by the lake. The comic book, you need levitation to get up high enough.
And like the golden acorn, you need invisibility because the squirrel always grabs it. So if you go and grab it while you're invisible, the squirrel can't. you beat the squirrel to it. Like that shit, I genuinely love. I wish the game had. Ironically, I wish it had more of that and less of the psi cards. Like if it was like a huge scavenger hunt and you needed to get all these things in this massive scavenger hunt to fully rank up, I think that would have been much better than getting these psi cards. Personally, I just wasn't. I never really understood the purpose of those other than to rank up. It just feels like it's like the one thing in this game that I feel is kind of, I hate to use this word, but lazy. It just doesn't seem like it has much. It doesn't have much thematic purpose, which is a shame when you consider everything else that has such a great thematic purpose. So yeah, that's what I have to say about that. Let's talk about levels proper. What was your guys' What was your favorite level, Jason? What was your favorite level?
The Waterloo level by far. It had, and I think the reason it was my favorite, aside from the creativity of like the characters dealing with the pressure of his the character whose mind you're going into is a long descendant of Napoleon. So his mind, he's playing a board game, like a war game, like Risk or something, with Napoleon himself, and you have to go down onto the board game and move pieces around. You have to get pieces and obtain them. You're utilizing a good chunk of your powers. There's almost no platforming. And there's a very small amount towards the end, but it's not that bad.
If you want to find everything in that level, there's a shit ton of challenging platforming.
Yeah, I mean,
I know.
You're talking about like Napoleon's castle at the end, right?
Well, I'm talking about like getting the baggage and finding the figments and stuff. There's lots of platforming in that level if you want to seek out the collectibles and stuff.
The extra stuff.
Did you find the memory vaults in that level, Jason?
I found one of them where he's in like high school or whatever, and he's kind of like the Chad, and then he loses a game to the guy who operates the elevator.
So it wasn't high school. Fred was one of the orderlies at the asylum, and
I kind of got that by the end, yeah.
And the guy that's handling the elevator was one of the patients, and Fred plays the game with him. He beats Fred, and Fred can't handle that the fact that one of the patients at the asylum beat him at that game, and that's what leads to him going crazy and basically.
This is what I mean by earlier, and that you need to actually find all the stuff for it to make total sense. I just thought that he was a guy who was like a Chad and kind of lost the board game and went crazy because he kept losing the board game.
In a way, he was at the very least he was someone with an amount of control at the asylum, and then he loses that and he can't handle that. And so
overall, it was just my favorite level because again, it was very creative.
Yeah.
You're using all your abilities to play this board game, and I love the fact that the 1812 Overture is playing in the background. Like, just very well done. I think the close runner-up would be the kaiju level, when you're freeing the fish.
Lungfishopolis.
Yeah, Lungfishopolis. It reminded me of Godzilla Destroy All Monsters.
Oh my god, yeah.
Yeah.
The music too.
Yeah.
Was spot on.
And
which came out around the same time. Yeah.
Whenever we see the word freedom, Katie always thinks of and references Braveheart, the end of Braveheart.
Yeah.
Ever since playing this game as a child, anytime I see the word freedom, I think of the lungfish in that level going, freedom, freedom, freedom. I always think of that.
That was funny.
Delaila, what's your favorite level?
Well, I just wanted to say something about the Waterloo level. Oh, first of all, the level design in this game is so advanced for its time. It's pretty brilliant. It does some things that like Mario Galaxy did with like the panning around of the level, especially in Sasha's level, where like you can like go like below it and above it and things like that. And the like winding and twistiness of it. But with the Waterloo level, it reminded me a little bit of Maquette, which is a puzzle game that came out earlier this year, where like if you jump up high enough, then all of a sudden your character's bigger and you have like a different perspective. Not that you have to change the perspective in a puzzle type way like you did in Maquette, but just the perspective of like the little diorama, and then you're in that world. Reminded me a lot of that. And
there's a building in the Waterloo game where if you find it, and you find the window of the building, you see Fred and Napoleon inside there.
I did see that. Yeah.
With the Maquette thing is like spot on.
Yeah, which is pretty brilliant because I thought that was a really cool concept throughout that game, and to see that implemented in 2005 in this one specific level is just very, very creative. My favorite though is the Milkman Conspiracy. I don't think that's a surprise though, like just the winding and the twisting, and it had like all of the classic like paranoid schizophrenic like data points, like the cameras coming out of everything and people peeking through everywhere, and then having to find the different items to access certain areas that were like under patrol. That level to me was just absolutely brilliant, and the most visually appealing, and also eerie for some reason. Like that's when I was like, oh my god, this is kind of like a horror game a little bit.
If I do not water these vegetables, they will die.
This is the Milkman Conspiracy is my favorite level too. It's the fan favorite level, and it's the one that everyone references. I am the milkman. My milk is delicious. You'll always have like Psychonauts fans quoting that. But yeah,
Milkman drought has ended.
I love that. It's just
Yeah.
That level is the perfect encapsulation of the blend of the 3D platformer and the point and click adventure genres that this game is trying to combine, because it has platforming and adventure, and I also think it's it might have my favorite boss fight from a creativity standpoint. I'll talk about that shortly, but yeah, it has the 3D platforming, and then it also has you have to find an item to find the way forward, and you have to figure out what you have to do in order to find that item, and there's lots of items that you wind up getting in that level that all serve different purposes or allow you entry to certain places, and it's just very, very I got stuck on that level for the longest time as a kid. And now, again, like we were talking about earlier, the first time you play will always be longest because you're finding the way forward. I breezed through it this time, and I almost wish that I got lost in it because it's just such a clever level, and it's so smart in its design, and it's so smart in its aesthetics and style. It's a real turning point for the game, right? I mean, Lungfishopolis is the true turning point, right? It's the first world that you enter that isn't an instructor. It's the first world that you enter that is troubled, at least that is troubled, and that's a great level. But Milkman Conspiracy is the first level. I mean, you spend the next 4 levels once you reach the asylum going into the minds of
patients.
People, patients that are at an asylum. So it's a true turning point for the game, and kind of what tells you what you're going to be doing for the remainder of your time playing it. And it's brilliant.
It's really progressive for that time, because I feel like a lot of games at that time that were exploring mental illness and like asylum settings did it in such a like stigmatizing kind of way, like, oh, they're crazy and evil and dangerous. These were just people that fucking had issues.
And I feel like not many games even tried, to explore stuff like that. But you're right, a lot of it was stigmatized and has been up until, I would say, the past probably the better part of a decade. But yeah, Psychonauts, just I'll always sing its praises for stuff like that, for its level design, how the aesthetics kind of match the level you're in and the person that you're diving into the brain of. What was your?
I love that level, the Milkman level. Like on paper, I just got so frustrated in it because I was constantly I just constantly did not know what it was, because every house, with few exceptions, every house is identical, has the same colored door. So I just kept losing where I was. But I agree with you that overall I love the concept, and I was enjoying myself with the characters and the concept of the world and the monotone voice of the agents and all that.
Yeah.
It's like 1950s suburbia. It's like Levittown.
All of the assassins are looking into the barrel of their guns.
Yeah.
And
all the spies. Yeah, they're just like they're very clearly spies. I mean, even from their appearance, but they have items that they don't really know what to do with. And like you walk, like I love walking into the graveyard, and like you'll hear them say when you have your flowers, and like, I see you are a grieving widow, I will give you your space. And you see like one guy like jamming out on the flowers as if it's a guitar. Like they're
And
totally
if you use
inconspicuous.
clairvoyance on them, you see the grieving widow.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go
Go
ahead.
ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna add something else, but
Go
finish
ahead.
your thought.
No. I have no thought. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. No, I was just gonna say, just like it was frustrating trying to find these items when, like you said, Jason, every house looks the same. But I feel like that like level of disorganization that he had with the level twisting and stuff like that, but in this suburban, seemingly comfortable, everything's the same, everything's all cushy, was just like a very interesting dichotomy to see in one person's mind. I just adored it because of that.
And
Like,
I
how do
also
you feel
really
so comfortable while being watched? It's weird.
yeah. And I also really like I alluded to earlier, I really like the boss of that level. Because you have to she throws things at you and you have to use telekinesis to throw them back at her, but then she turns off the lights and she can see in the dark, but you can't. What are you supposed to do? You have to use clairvoyance on her and see yourself from her perspective in order to beat the boss. And I loved that. I always loved that.
Yeah,
And I thought I think it's one of the most creative uses of powers in a boss fight in the entire game, if not the most creative or
totally.
most creative.
So
Good lord.
I agree with you on paper. This is actually the only boss fight that it's funny. It's your favorite. It's the only boss fight that I actively disliked. The reason being was specifically because of one thing. So you have to kind of come up on the stairs in order to be in range to levitate the cookie box bombs and throw them back at her. Now, at certain points in the fight, after the point where it turns off the lights, so you have to use the clairvoyance, it will turn the clairvoyance off. So it's essentially RNG whether or not you'll fall off of the stairs, because you'll usually be right on the edge of the stairs.
Wait, what turns the clairvoyance off?
At certain points in the fight, after you've used clairvoyance, she might jump and it's completely random. It will turn the clairvoyance off.
It turned off your that never happened for me. That might be a
maybe
PS4 version bug.
I was gonna say maybe it just wasn't like on a cooldown or so, because there is a cooldown for the clairvoyance, isn't there?
I didn't realize it was a cooldown for clairvoyance.
There's not.
Clairvoyance doesn't have a cooldown. I think it might have just been a bug on that version for some reason.
Maybe I don't know. That's really the only thing. The only grudge I have with it. The other thing was that
would be really frustrating. So
the other thing was that because of the fixed camera angle when you are using clairvoyance, it's hard to tell the range for telekinesis to the boxes. But again, we already went over the camera stuff. Like
and I had trouble with that too. So don't think that I didn't have that issue. I did. I guess that just says a lot about how much I like that boss fight and the things you have to do in order to.
Again, like I said, it's an awesome. It's awesome. An awesome concept on paper. It didn't fully I still had fun playing the boss. Like it's the only one where like I had active issues with it.
Gotcha. Delaila, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say the only thing about that level that bothered me related to sort of bosses was like those little, I don't even know what it was that I was fighting, but you had to fight something like every once in a while. Like when you had to climb the telephone pole, I think. That was the only thing that I was like, why am I doing this?
And I kind of was wondering that too in this recent playthrough. Where I was like, because that doesn't happen in any other level. So it's not like you can pin that as like, well, it's because Boyd he's clinically insane, so like there's something in his mind that's constantly trying to attack you or whatever. Like you can't even really make that argument when it doesn't happen in Gloria, Fred, or Edgar's minds. I'm kind of just chalking it up to I kind of just chalked it up to the fact that there are no enemies in that level. There's like ostensibly no combat until the final boss. So I feel like they just felt like they needed to put some form of combat in the level, and I almost wish that they hadn't, because it like while it was a clever encounter, I liked the encounter. It just didn't really make sense where it was placed, and it was placed 2 to 3 different times, It just didn't really make much sense.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think I don't actually know why those were placed in there. I probably should have done some research on it, but um yeah, if you happen to do some research or you happen to know, leave a comment, let us know. Um let's let real quick, besides the meat circus, what was everybody's least favorite level?
I'd say the theater. I don't know. It just like
Yeah, the theater because the platforming to get to the Phantom. Um,
I wouldn't even
Probably.
say, well, that's a fair point. I think I think it's the theater for me too, just because it mostly takes place in the same area, and I do like the idea of switching the stages and then switching the moods for the stages and whatnot to kind of get different areas of the level, so to
Yes.
speak. But I don't know. It's very creative. It just didn't. It wasn't my favorite. Um,
yeah.
Almost every
It was
other
the same.
level.
Yeah, it's the same thing with like it always came down to platform. What what levels emphasize platforming over puzzles? Like I loved the puzzles in the theater. I hated the platforming section. It was the same thing with Edgar's, where I loved the idea of like going in and out of these paintings to get around the
Oh
city
my
Yeah.
god,
and
yeah.
buying different paintings from people on the street and hanging them up to solve the puzzles. I hate Bull. Because especially with the hitbox, because I couldn't tell the hitbox is not
Yeah.
directly on you; it's really
Yeah.
big. Sometimes it
Yeah.
almost feels like it lags behind you. So like I will fit my actual character model will be behind a wall, but I'll somehow still get caught by the bull and get
Right.
pushed back. So that kind of thing just frustrated me.
I think,
That
and
was
I
actually one of my other favorite levels, the Luchador one, because of the
Black
colors.
Velvetopia.
Wrestling fights, yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's another one that's really it's really cool when you learn what's actually got like yes, like Jason mentioned earlier about how that one, yeah, you're absolutely right. That level does have an unreliable narrator with the memories and stuff because he's kind of in denial, and he's kind of and he's just so torn up about this breakup with his girlfriend, and you think that it's this much more romantic story than it actually is, and it's just like he was the high school wrestling champ, and his girlfriend left him for a male cheerleader, and he was so torn up about it, and
yo, I was
all of
so
the
mad at her because
and
I
all the
liked Edgar so much.
yeah, Edgar's a cool
Yeah.
guy. And like all the wrestlers you fight were the other members of his wrestling team, that like just
Mhm.
bullied and were so mad at him after he blew the big match. And once you
Mhm.
come to finally learn that, it's just it pays off really well. Um and it's just super clever. That the thing I don't like about that level is just it's very labyrinthine, and there's not really an easy way sometimes to know where you are, and thus where you have
Yeah.
to go to get back
Yeah.
on track. But I the aesthetics of that level are so good,
It's so
and
pretty.
the overall like theme of the level is very cool.
I think one thing they did do a good job in that was giving you good teleportation options.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Through like even though most of the level takes place on that single street, um there's plenty of like once you as you go further down you unlock more shortcuts and whatnot to get
Yeah.
to where you want
Yeah.
to go. It's just like there's other side streets that you can take that lead to some pretty big paths that you can
Mhm.
kind of get lost in, especially if you go into the sewer. um there's a few paths you can take down there. One leads to like a secret area. um yeah. All right, back after some technical difficulties. Let's finish this. One of the last things I want to talk about, the combat. How did we feel about the combat?
Where I started to hate it was at Sasha's level.
Yeah,
Actually, that's the first level that there's combat, so I
yeah.
guess I hated it immediately. And part of this was because of the level, like how it pans around one cube. Um, my gun kept shifting, like my camera kept shifting to the other side. Once again, complaints about the camera, common theme in this episode. Um,
Mhm.
I feel like anytime combat didn't involve using your side powers to figure out a puzzle of whatever boss or enemy you were fighting, it was kind of just like annoying
Yeah.
or not very satisfying either.
Yeah, the enemies, like I brought up earlier, there's not really much in the way of variety. Most of what you're fighting is sensors. They don't really change up very much. You don't really need to find creative uses of your power. You can use them. Like you can I feel like the biggest issue is like telekinesis in general doesn't it's much more of a puzzle solving tool when it could have been much more than that. And I feel like they tried to make it as if, like in the tutorial you have for telekinesis, Cruller tries to make it out like it can be used as a combat move, but there's really not many uses for it outside of puzzle solving.
Yeah.
And there are some, like going back to the Edgar level, and you use it in the boss fight to throw the spears, which I thought was awesome.
I'm putting
But
boss fights in a
problem
totally
was
separate camp because boss fights are totally different encounters than just general enemies. Boss fights in this game especially are much more supposed to be like puzzle like encounters, where you have to use your powers in creative ways. But general enemies, like there isn't much variety that requires you to figure out creative uses for them. Like yeah, you can set shit on fire, but like is that the most creative thing we can do with your powers?
When it comes to combat, I mean, again, this might just be like how old the game is, because maybe I've just become over reliant on games always having like a roll or dodge function. But if you're not locked onto an enemy, like you can't tap X to do like the, jump back, dodge, whatever you want to call it.
You can
that
press the
Razz
jump
does.
button. Oh, you mean unless you're locked onto the enemy?
Yeah, to dodge an attack. Yeah. So, like, and a lot of times, just because of the nature of the design of the camera and whatnot, or whatever kind of attack I'm using, I won't be locked on. I guess early on, I'll agree that when you don't have a lot of options, the combat kind of feels restrained, or I'm sorry, not restrained, underwhelming. Especially because you early on, you run out of ammo so much, and this game has a weird thing with ammo regeneration where, for some reason, when you're out of ammo, it will never drop ammo when you break stuff, and when you are full of ammo, it will only drop ammo. And then, like, when you need health, it doesn't drop health. Like, I don't understand the algorithm behind that, but maybe it was just my experience. I don't know. But yeah, towards the end of the game, I actually found combat to become even more enjoyable. Probably just because I had more options, and because I did upgraded sufficiently enough where like my Psy Blast would ricochet off everybody, and it would almost feel like Ratchet and Clank in a way, where like, early on, like it's like whatever, you're just shooting a gun, but by the end of the game, you're blowing shit up and throwing grenades. You're doing all this stuff.
Yeah. There's this game could have been good without any combat, period. Like with the little enemies in the like they didn't really need to be there, and the game would have been sufficient.
Just the boss fights, yeah.
Just the boss fights, yeah. But it does remind me, like the powers and stuff like that reminds me of a game I recently played called Scarlet Nexus, where it could have used those powers, the pyrokinesis and the psychokinesis, to fight enemies in creative puzzle type ways. But I guess this game just limited it to boss fights. But I still think they could have used those powers interestingly, like they did in Scarlet Nexus, which is a completely different game, but with similar elements.
As someone that played that too, I totally see what you're saying, because like, well, a lot of Scarlet Nexus's like combat is like using those abilities in combat situations where it calls for them, like enemies that move super fast, so you have to use hypervelocity to move super fast too, so you can match their speed. Enemies that are like water types, so you imbue yourself with electricity so you can electrocute them and shit like
or
that.
There would be like some enemies that would hide and you had to turn invisible in order to attack them.
I think that the problem the problem with this game was a lot of there were only 8 powers, right? And I already know, like, there's a new power that's getting introduced like super early in Psychonauts 2 that could lead to more interesting puzzle solving and more interesting combat. But with the powers that you have in this first game, like a lot of them don't lend themselves very well to combat situations. They mostly lend themselves to puzzle solving.
Puzzle solving.
Um So I think and if like there is one that could do both, it's the way it's designed, like telekinesis in this case is what I'm mostly talking about. The way it's designed, it doesn't lend itself well to combat. I was just thinking like how cool it would be to have like the telekinesis of like control, where you're
Well, that I was just gonna
constantly
say that.
yeah, like that, like to me that is like the perfect use of telekinesis in like both a puzzle solving way and a combat way, because you can get so power trippy in that game with that power, just constantly grabbing and flinging shit at enemies.
I wouldn't be surprised if they do just rip that straight out of control.
Well,
Yeah, well, in all games that have telekinesis, it's so fun. Like BioShock, even Scarlet Nexus, like it's just so fun that you can have a shitty game, but if you have telekinesis and you could just hurl shit at enemies, it's gonna be fine. Like it's gonna get a rating higher than it would without it.
I do like with the telekinesis that you can just grab people, and that comes up in boss fights, like with the Luchadors and in Edgar. Like you can just grab them, throw them down, and then beat the shit out of them. Yeah.
And what's funny about that is, we're talking so much shit on like creative use of powers and it not having enough of it. I actually didn't even know you could do that, but it totally makes sense you could do that. My main strategy for the Luchadors was like, I would light them on fire, and then I'd also turn invisible and like let them charge, and then once they fell over, I would go and beat them up a little bit, and I kept doing that. I'll also say with regards to the powers in combat, you get confusion way too late in the game.
Yes.
Not getting it until Black Velvetopia basically makes it useless. There's like, what else are you going to use the power on? It's for that level. And
there's like 40 minutes left in the game. Yeah.
You could use it you have to use it in that level a couple times, and then you could maybe use it in the meat circus a few times, and that's it. Unless you're not like me and you didn't like get most of the collectibles on your first time going through a lot of the levels. Like, if you have to go back and you want to explore more, like, yeah, you could use it then. But, like, you get it so late in the game. It just sucks. The average player isn't going to go back and do all that stuff. So,
and I feel like I hope Psychonauts 2 has like a end boss or something. Like the last boss would have probably been so much more interesting if you had to use every single power. Like in this phase of the boss, you use this power and this power. In the second stage, where it forces you to use all your powers, so you feel like a true Psychonaut. Whereas this one's just like, okay, turn big.
Yeah, the first fight with the Butcher, you're literally just platforming on to beat his head. I mean, you might need to use the shield to block against his cleaves, but other than that,
all right. I mean, is there anything else you guys want to talk about that we haven't talked about? Or are we good to move on to the final question?
I think we covered everything. Yeah.
This is a bit of a cheeky one, but you guys liked this game, right? Like, you don't regret agreeing to play this game, do you?
There were some moments that I was like...
Last night, Last night, if you asked me this question last night before I gave it a full think through over the course of today while I was working, I would have been more upset, and the Jason Kwasnicki rating would have been much lower. But after, like, calming down and actually thinking about it, like, and analyzing it, I realized that for most of the game, I was really enjoying it way more than I was annoyed by it. It was really that those last final areas and bosses that I was really getting hyper frustrated.
Yeah.
Good. I'm glad that I'm glad that the pros outweighed the cons, right?
Yes.
I think so, yeah.
Because
like I said earlier, this is not a Death Stranding scenario. Like
I said, this is a top 10 video game for me, but I definitely know it's not without its faults. Like, it is not a perfect video game, but all the good things about it they just mean so much more than all the bad things.
All that creative DNA and concept, I just want to see done so well in Psychonauts 2. Like that is what will really make me feel like, okay, I know where this came from, and I'm glad I played it. I'm so glad that it's growing in this direction because it
Yeah.
has so much potential to be like a real top tier game.
Yes.
If it fixes the gameplay and the platforming and combat.
And really,
It's definitely worth playing to, especially to understand why it has such a cult following.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not even just like exclusive to the series, right? Like a lot of that DNA is just in that studio. It's just with Double Fine. I mean, Double Fine put up a Kickstarter in 2012. It was 2011 or 2012 to make another point and click adventure game, and it got funded in less than a day because people know Tim Schafer and know the creative formula within that studio is so strong. Because of games like Psychonauts and because of the games that that Tim Schafer made at LucasArts, but and other games that Tim Schafer's made or that they've made at Double Fine since Psychonauts, like Brutal Legend. You know, that's another game that has a huge cult following.
Man, that's a game. If we can, we got to go back and do.
I've never actually played it, so that would be I've
never beat it, but I did play it, and
Yeah.
I like that game.
I would be amenable to it. Okay. Jason, what's the Kwasnicki rating, and let's wrap this bad boy up.
I'm gonna give it a solid 7 bottles of milk.
Nice. Jason is the milkman.
Remember,
that's actually higher than I thought you were gonna go.
Yeah,
I was originally gonna do 6. I was originally gonna do 6.5. But again, like I said, for most of the game, the platforming isn't that prevalent. It's really towards the end. Like again, my initial reaction upon beating it was much worse than when I actually took a step back and thought about the game in its totality. And I definitely don't think it's a bad game. I wouldn't say it's an average game. It's definitely an above average game. Remember, 5 is average. Maybe I would give it a 6. Originally, I was going to give it a 6.5 bottles of milk, but I think back on a lot of the character, the charming aesthetics and story, and the puzzle elements. It definitely comes together and outweighs the issues with the platforming. And
also, the character design. We didn't really talk about that, but they're all so quirky looking. I adore it.
Yeah, I mean, look, we could sit here for another hour talking about especially how like how the character design, they're all so unique and they fit their personality so well. So it's like very distinctive, like who's who and what they're like, and we could sit here and talk about the music and how fitting that is in so many places. We gotta wrap this up.
No, there's one thing I have to say because I don't know if you guys noticed, but if you punch the guy with like the big hair, he's like, "Oh, sorry, I'm grateful that you're challenging me to a fight, but I only want to fight a bear." Because like you could just punch characters in this game and they all react to it.
The Russian guy, yeah.
There's so many things you can do to so many characters, and they all have like unique reactions and things to say. It's yeah. If you really listened to this whole episode and haven't played Psychonauts, like go play Psychonauts. It like
play it, but also don't play it.
Yeah, play it maybe up until you get to the
play it knowing you're gonna hate things,
and then play it knowing that you're especially gonna hate the final level. No one likes that level. It's just rough. Okay.
Yeah.
Delaila, what you working on? What you doing?
I've been streaming twitch.tv/assassina_san. Returnal videos are coming out, even though I finished it, but they're rolling out as a full playthrough. And just reviews and stuff are out. But I started playing Death's Door today. That was dope. So I'll probably be playing more of that after, alongside Skyward Sword.
Yeah.
So.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
Jason, you're not doing anything.
Yo, y'all can find me on the Genova server of Final Fantasy XIV right now. My name is currently Leon Squallheart. It will be changing though. I will update y'all what the name will change to.
Jason and I are getting bit by the Final Fantasy XIV bug again. I have been playing as well.
You and everyone else.
Yeah.
Well, we had been playing beforehand, but now we're really trying to...
Before it was cool, totally.
Exactly.
To be fair, yeah, I've been playing since the game came out, and I've just literally never been caught up. And this is the first. Endwalker Coming is the first time where I'm like, I have to catch up. I want to be in there on the ground floor. Like I'm gonna
Same.
commit myself to that.
Mark got me into it like shortly before Stormblood, so I'm not one of those newbies who's coming in and being like, "Oh, World of Warcraft sucks. I'm gonna play Final Fantasy."
Yeah. If you liked this episode of Read the Spoils, if you're watching on YouTube, thank you. Like the episode, subscribe to the channel if you're not already. If you tell us what you liked and didn't like in the comments, talk to us in the comments, engage with us. We love it. We love to hear your feedback.
We know you're listening.
Yeah.
We know it. We see the numbers.
I see you.
If you listen
Milkman
on Apple,
sees everything.
If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please rate and review the show. 5 stars preferred. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you didn't like. I cannot tell you how much it means to me if you do any of that. Like, please do it. Talk to us. You could talk to us on Twitter too. Well, not Jason, but you could talk to me on Twitter at Nibelheim. You could talk to Delaila on Twitter at Assassina_sign. You could talk to Jason on Twitter at Solid Quaz, but you'd basically be talking to a brick fucking wall because he doesn't do anything on there. He doesn't use it. And yeah, share the episode, follow us in the places and the things, and the next game, Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword, or scheduling pending, Ghost of Tsushima is getting its director's cut content, and we are gonna play that new content and probably do a brief discussion about it. I don't know which one's gonna come first, so I guess just stay tuned. And yeah, thanks.
It'll be
for
similar
listening.
to what we did with Bioshock.
Yeah. It'll be like that. It'll be like a supplement thing. But yeah, thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.